Okay, today we're continuing our discussion about assembly drawings, or that is creating assembly drawings from an assembly. And the first major step that we've already gone through is mating all the parts together so that they fit and look like the thing would function. The next step would be to take them apart, that is to explode them apart so we can see how the pieces go together. You'll see this in IKEA how-to manuals of how parts go together on that furniture you bought, or just about anything that you have to kind of assemble yourself. And this is going to be our assembly drawing. It's going to show each of the components as part of the assembly. We'll show an assembled view, an exploded view, bill of materials, and balloons. So we've already mated this part together and walked through that. Now we want to explode it. And explode is simple, but I decided to do it just as one process or one step. So first thing I do is I sort of compose the picture. That is, I'll arrange my 3D assemblies so that I'm looking at it from the side that I think is most useful. Well, because this has two parts that come down off the bottom of the wheel and only the one handle, which is pretty simple going up, I'm just going to tilt it and kind of look at it from underneath slightly. And I'm leaving it at the angle it's at. That is, I don't really care that precisely. If it bothers you to have it at any slightly different than perfect angle or whatever, you can always use the arrow keys or adjust it by degrees or whatever. But I'm just adjusting it to a view that looks all right to me, and that's pretty much it right there. And I'll zoom in a little bit. Now, I want to start exploding it, and as I start to explode these parts off, I really want to think about it as if they are physically real parts, just like we did when we were mating. We think about how they'd go together, how they'd function, and it helps us to mate them in a more logical way. So as I look at this guy, I can take this pin off, this shaft off first by itself because there's nothing else related to it. But if I go to take the handle off, I can't just pull it off because the nut has to come off first in real life. The software will let us take things off in a magical way, but we want to just, I think for just layout purposes and thinking purposes, want to keep it as much real as possible. So I will take this blue guy first. So here's the process. It's pretty straightforward. Go over here to the upper left of the screen and go to Configuration Manager. And what we're really doing, okay, oh, I was already there. Go to Configuration Manager. You were probably over here looking at your steps, your parts that created the assembly. Go back to Configuration Manager and right-click on this one that says Default. That means that's the default configuration. It's the only one created so far. The only version of this assembly is an assembled version so far. So I'm going to right-click on it and go to New Exploded View. Now, if you read the fine print here in yellow, it's basically saying go out there and grab a part, a component at a time, or a set of components, whatever way you prefer, and drag them where you want them to go in this assembly. So I'm going to grab the blue part first. Notice it changes color, lets me know it's been selected, and we get this triad here that I can grab any one of these arrows and drag the part in the direction of the arrow, either towards the arrow or back against it. Again, think about it real. I really couldn't, on a real part, drag it in the blue arrow direction. I couldn't drag it in the red arrow direction. I pretty much am stuck with this single axis. So I grab this guy and just drag it down. The spacing doesn't matter much because we can adjust it at any time, but to save yourself some work, go ahead and kind of space it as if you're composing your layout. So I'll just say that's far enough away. Now I want to go grab these other parts. Again, I'm thinking realistic. I'm going to grab the nut first. Now, we aren't going to spin it off or anything. It's not that realistic, but it helps to kind of think about it as if it's real. So then grab that green axis and drag that guy down. Then grab the other thing, that is in this case the handle, and drag it up. I can see I'm going to run out of space here, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, grab a hold of that, and drag him up. Now I'm just going to keep that for a second because it looks fine, and we'll just say we're done. So I'm just going to hit the check mark over here and say we're good to go. I can look at that from any angle and see that I have exploded the parts away from each other, and it's perfectly fine. However, sometimes you want to edit. You look at that and go, well, I think I kind of got the nut a little farther away than I really needed to, or what I think looks visually clear, or something like that. So we can go back and edit the exploded view. So I'm going to go expand this over here where it shows the default view. Right click on the exploded view we just created and edit feature. In this case, the feature isn't a model per se, it's the whole assembly. In this case, the exploded assembly. So I want to edit that. So edit feature. And now over here in these steps, exploded steps box, it shows each part in the order that I grabbed it. If you go over there and click on one, you'll see it highlights the part that was moved first, and then it highlights the part moved second, and etc., etc. Okay, well, what did I want to edit? I wanted to edit the nut. Now here's a little bit of a warning. It's kind of second nature for most of us to go out here and just start grabbing things on the screen. So we could grab this nut and drag it around. If I do go grab it, it'll add another explode step. It's already been moved down to here at that second explode step. If I want to move it further, the best way is to do what I just did. Select it in the tree so we're editing that explode step. Then grab the arrow and drag it farther or put it closer, whatever it is you were intending to do. So let me reiterate that a little bit because that's pretty important. We can edit any of these, but there's no reason to add extra explode steps, extra work, extra processing, when all we wanted to do was edit one of these. So we go into exploded view, right click on it, edit feature, find the step that we want to explode. I want to move the handle a little bit closer. Go find that handle, grab the little blue arrow, and drag it a little closer. It's a visual adjustment anyway. I don't need to have 2 inches, 5 inches, whatever. I'm just trying to make sure my drawing and my assembly is clear. When I'm done, I say OK. Okay, so the next step is it's a simple one, and I wouldn't call it required in all cases, but sometimes it really helps, especially on complex assemblies, to put in an explode line. That is an axis line showing how these parts kind of go together. An axis line here that shows how the parts go together. And with SOLIDWORKS it's pretty easy. Basically what I'm going to do is go up to explode line sketch, and it says items to connect. First tip there is I want to put an axis line in on this between the handle where it connects to this guy and the nut. I could grab a cylinder, and a cylinder. That is, each of the cylindrical pieces that make up the middle of this. But I recommend, if you have a whole bunch of parts in line with each other, and you know they're in line, grab the first cylinder at the top of a string, and then the last piece at the other end, and then that way you only have 2 selections, and you know you've got a single line going down through all of them. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll tip this so I can kind of see the cylinders a little better, zoom in some. I grab this cylinder. It looks like it's got threads on it. They're just cosmetic, so there really is a true cylinder there. Check this arrow. Make sure the arrow is aiming down in the direction you want this axis line to be drawn. I can toggle it by flipping it up there, but what would happen is when I go down and grab the next one, it'll go out of that pin or bolt up that, or the handle up that way, and then come back down. And that's not what we intend. We want it to just go straight down. So make sure the arrow is aiming in the direction you want. Then grab the last cylinder in the set of concentric pieces that you're doing, and say OK. Now we've got an axis line going down through those parts. I'll get out of it just so you can see it just stays there in 3D space. Right now, depending on how it refreshes the screen, sometimes you'll actually see the line crossing over other parts. Don't let that, like right now, right there, you can kind of see the lines going through all the parts. When we get to the drawing, it goes through a cleanup process that basically makes sure you only see the line in the gaps in between parts. It isn't just laying right on top of all of them. So we've got that one. Let's go do the other one. Same process. I'm going to go to, it's under the assembly toolbars, explode line sketch. We're actually already in it, but just so you can see this from scratch, I'm going to close that down. There's the one we already created. I'm hitting explode line sketch. I grab the cylinders that I want to align with. Check that arrow, because sometimes it really will be aiming the other way, and then grab the next cylinder or the last one if there's a whole bunch of them. It's ready to go. We say OK. Check that. So now we've done what I'll call the second step to the assembly drawing process. We had modeled all the parts. We mated them together in the last demo that I did on this subject. Now we've exploded them. We can compose the picture. And in the next video, we'll talk a little bit about where you go from here. Basically, we're done with the modeling aspects with the full physical 3D components. Now we're going to go over and start a drawing and arranging views, balloons, bill of materials, etc.